Before Matt Reeves' depiction of the Batman graced TV screens, I had developed an appreciation for the character, his backstory, and the villains which fill out its universe. The antagonists which push Batman to his limits and entertain his audiences. It seems obvious to say, Batman has become a pop culture icon through the Arkham game series and, of course, the tentpole Christopher Nolan films. Probably the reference point for my generation of modern Batman. For context, 2022's The Batman is my favourite theatrical experience of the character. The film went all in on the gritty noir detective work which has been missing, put together with a great script, slow, tense pacing, and excellent cinematography from Greg Fraser. It truly was a masterpiece. With popular franchises like Batman and Spider-Man, their stories will inevitably continue, but what's important is whether there's a real vision, and Matt Reeves has proven himself as a worthy successor to Nolan, infusing Batman with his perspective on the character. For me, the Batman was not only my favourite depiction of the character, honing in on the great detective, but it was also a visually stunning entry. With any highly profitable entry these days, it seems studios want to churn out all they can from it, and that has come in the form of the Batman spin off TV show, The Penguin. Spin offs are tricky affairs, but The Penguin just feels like another chapter to the Batman, and I loved sinking myself into that world again in the television format. For a start, the show is stunning as you would expect, oozing sophistication. It's of a high caliber, not like your typical CW show. Television and film is only becoming more blurred, and the Penguin looks just as good as the Batman. I would be perfectly happy watching this on the big screen, and I wouldn't even suspect it was made for TV. There's this beautiful orange tone that colours all the light, and a high contrast that bathes the show in darkness. The Nolan films never tackled the Penguin, so casual audiences largely remember the character from Danny DeVito's campy role in Burton's films. This Penguin is the complete opposite from that take on the character, more like a Tony Soprano mob boss with New York accent to boot. In fact, the Penguin's face looks modelled off of Tony Soprano, and I think that's a great inspiration for the Penguin. The Sopranos is one of HBO Max's golden shows, and The Penguin is clearly going for that status. Tony Soprano is iconic, cut from the same cloth as anti-heroes like Walter White, so the Penguin fits into that mold beautifully. Not only that, but the Penguin is played by none other than Colin Farrell, an extremely underrated actor who embodies the mobster persona brilliantly. He literally becomes submerged into the character. In many ways, the Batman worked so well because you bought into the universe. All the characters felt real, and the story was compelling. And here the Penguin is compelling because he isn't some campy, laughable villain, he's a twisted criminal with deep insecurities. He's been transformed into a far more human character, and it works exceptionally well. For some, Penguin might be too sympathetic in this opener, but I think that's a nice change. He's a bad person, but he has layers to his persona. And he's not at the top of the food chain, he's a criminal underdog working his way up for respect and privilege, and we get to watch that journey unfold, tantalized as the audience. Some might find this take on the Penguin too grounded, even going as far to change his name from Oswald Cobblepot to Oz Cobb, which ironically sounds pretty ridiculous. Maybe it's just me, but Oz Cobb sounds weirder than Oswald Cobblepot. The point is that Matt Reeves completely reshaped the Penguin into a mafia-esque persona with plenty of charm, and he's clearly taken lots of inspiration from hits like The Sopranos to flesh out the Penguin, making his show worth a watch. It's the Penguin, yes, but it's also about a human being, and the show has an identity, a very slick tone. From the opening, I was pretty sure the Penguin was going to be a good experience, panning up to the Penguin watching Gotham as that epic Batman theme tune plays is perfect. And newscasts keeping us up to date in Gotham feels very efficient. Basically, Gotham is in a wreck after the Riddler's actions, and it's the perfect playground for the Penguin to meddle with. The stage has been set, and now it's up to us to watch and invest. Everything just feels like a lot of work has went into it, and it all flows smoothly as a premiere. It's simply very easy to become lost in Matt Reeves' world. After Carmine's death, Alberto becomes a new power figure, and that makes him a prime target for the Penguin. Now, the Penguin isn't like the Joker or Bane, so he goes about things in a more subdued way that allows for good storytelling. Instead of bog standard superhero action, we get intimate dialogue about neighborhood before a stone cold killing. It's all this dialogue that allows us to sit with a character, to sit with the Penguin and learn more about him. It's why The Sopranos worked so well. Despite seeming like a mafia show, there wasn't much action. It was all made up of a sense of community, smaller talks, and so on. The Penguin talking about old school gangsters and neighborhood is reminiscent of that formula, and I love this aspect of the show. The show reinforces that Penguin hates being looked down upon. As soon as he's called pathetic, the conversation ends, and that person becomes his victim. Just like Batman, he's driven by his own past and is his own complex character. And this is all that we get from the introductory scene, a look into a damaged mind yearning for power. But beyond that, someone who's trying to convince himself that he's enough. Every time he waddles, it's like a burden, and this theme of disability is continued when the Penguin spares a stranger with a speech impediment, seeing his own struggles within another. Now, the Penguin could have killed Victor instantly, but he saw an opportunity to shape someone like him, a chance for companionship. And this gives Penguin some sympathy and depth. It just reminds us that the Penguin's disability drives his character for good and bad. It's something that he's worn for a long time, and it's clearly had a huge impact on his life. So it's a great move to have the two come to work together, essentially the Robin to his Batman. A little cliche perhaps, but the show can do a lot more following an extra character and building up a relationship. Victor starts as an unwilling accomplice, but the door is left open for this to grow into camaraderie. The show plants the seeds for more to come, and it delivers a great introduction in its premiere episode. Penguin's pretty chatty to his new friend because he sees some respect, some mirror of his own past. And it allows us to see his better side. After all villains think they're the hero, and the Penguin is the key player in this story. Essentially, the Penguin gives Victor a chance, pulled into a life of crime and misconduct. Morally, it's a dubious beginning, but for an audience, this is a thrilling start. The episode really dives into Penguin's mentality. We see him uncover himself physically and mentally. The character is just allowed to grow and be vulnerable. And this kind of writing is something the Batman just didn't have time for because Batman was the protagonist. And that's why I think this show is just a great watch. It's not following your typical villain formula, instead it's vying for prestige drama. The Penguin isn't the most intimidating monster in the Batman mythos, and with Colin Farrell's soft-spoken performance, he's a character I can see a lot of mileage out of. He's a terrible person that tricks himself into believing his history means his actions are fine, and that his reasons for these crimes are important. The typical things people have to convince themselves when overstepping any boundary. Seeing Penguin's anxiety, insecurity, and charm to its full extent goes a long way to developing the character. In many ways, we haven't even yet seen this with Batman himself. Seeing Oz has a family just allows to paint a tragic picture of the Penguin. His mother supports him, but in doing so inflates his ego. She comes from a messed up place, but she's all he's ever known, and she fuels his amorality, alongside his past trauma. The show does some things you might expect of a spin-off, but it does so exceptionally well. And the second episode proves that Penguin can be volatile, and Vic's safety isn't guaranteed if he disappoints. A great emotional hook going forwards. To me, the Penguin feels like premium television, and I can't wait for more episodes. Following the Penguin's journey for power is great. Fingers crossed the quality stays this high. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps a lot. I would like to give a special thank you to Starfleet Sohail, who supports me on Patreon. You can find him at Starfleet Sohail on YouTube and Twitter. If you would like to support the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Links are in the description below. But most importantly, thank you for watching.